Welcome everyone to AuditNet's Training Without Travel webinars, IDEA Software Training via Practical Application, presented jointly by AuditNet and Richard Cascarino and Associates. Today's webinar is Advanced Script Writing in IDEA, Part 1. My name is Jim Kaplan. I'm founder and owner of AuditNet, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Today's presenter and subject matter expert, again, is our speaker, Richard Cascarino, principal of Richard Cascarino and Associates. Let me go ahead and have Richard introduce himself, give you a brief overview of his background, and then I'll cover the housekeeping items, disclaimer, and important information about the AuditNet IDEA partnership. Richard?
Thanks, Jim. Welcome. I apologize if I sound a bit croaky. I'm suffering from a bit of a head cold. If you cannot understand me, please raise a hand, and I'll try and make it a bit clearer. As Jim said, I'm principal of Richard Cascarino and Associates, based in Steamboat Springs in Colorado, and also in Johannesburg in South Africa. My background, I've got some 30 years experience in IT audit, IT security, audit training, and consultancy. I'm a past president of the Institute of Internal Auditors in South Africa, a member of ISACA, the ACFE, and the Denver chapter of the IIA. I'm also the author of some books that you can see on the screen. As far as this particular webinar is concerned, probably the most critical one is the Auditor's Guide to IT Auditing. Having said all that, I will hand you back to Jim, and he can take you through some of the housekeeping for the webinar.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today. Let me go over the housekeeping items. We sent out the slides this morning, and I won't read the slides, but I will just remind you that we are recording today's webinar, and you will receive a link to that recording, and we'll be sending that link out hopefully within the next day or the day after. The link will be sent via email. We are also under NASBA rules, and NASBA rules do require us to ask polling questions during the webinar. CPE certificates will be sent to those who answer all of the polling questions. If you're joining us from a tablet device, you may not be able to answer the polling questions, in which case just accumulate all your answers and put them into an email, send them to me or Richard, and we will get them included in the information to make sure that you get your CPE certificates. You can submit questions via the chat box on your screen. We'll answer them during the webinar or at the conclusion. Usually those will be taken care of during the polling questions when we have a bit of a break. After the webinar is over, you'll also have an opportunity to provide feedback and an evaluation form. Please take the time to complete that form. The next slide shows the information about disclaimer. I will not read that slide either. Please pay attention to that in your handouts. Now, I would like to mention about the IDEA AuditNet partnership. AuditNet has entered into an agreement to provide access to subscriber content to IDEA Premium supported users. If you're currently a Premium supported IDEA user, you can access the AuditNet content at no cost. For more information, please go to the AuditNet site for details on how to log in and access the more than 2,300 templates. There is a slide included in today's packet that gives supplemental information, and there is a link to the video explaining how to access the AuditNet content through IDEA. So at this point, without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Richard to get into today's advanced script writing. Richard?
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so what are we going to look at today? We're going to start off by having a look at creating your first IDEA script, and then we'll have a look at using the IDEA script editor. We'll have a look at use of variables and constants and the use of conditional statements and loops within IDEA Basic and IDEA script. We'll take a look at working with databases, and we'll look at basic maths in IDEA script. Okay, so without further ado, let's start up IDEA and carry on. So starting IDEA the way we normally do, just fire it up and away we go. Okay, so we've started up IDEA. Now, as we said before in previous webinars, namely webinar 8, IDEA script itself can be recorded as you go, written from scratch, or using a combination. So we'll take a look at where we are by going into the module IDEA script. Okay. If you go into macros and then look at IDEA script, and you can see in there we have the capability of writing a new script, or we can create it from where we're going. Okay. So I can, from within there, I'll close down IDEA script at the moment, and I can say that I want to start recording a macro. Okay, the big red button, top left hand side, record macro. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it recording, and then, as with any other IDEA process, first thing we have to do is open the file that we're interested in. So I'm going to go into my home, my desktop plus, and I'm going to pick up some files. In this case, I'm going to pick up some Excel files. And the Excel files I'm going to pick up are sitting in a project called samples. Okay, so this time it's not coming from tutorial, it's coming out of samples. And down at the bottom of that you'll see an Excel spreadsheet set called sample. We'll pick that one up. And you'll see there's a whole pile of sheets in there that we can bring in. In this case, we'll take our sample customers, and we'll just bring in that one. We could bring in them all, but in this case, all we want is customers. We can see that the first row is field names, so we'll bring it in as that. And I'll say OK. So I brought in all my sample customers. You can see that I've got the customer number, the company, the name, the last name, country, Argentina, etc. Credit limit, and so on. So in this case, what I'm wanting to do is do an analysis. So I'll do an analysis, and I want to do an extract. And unlike previous ones where we've done a direct extract, I'm going to do an indexed extract. And it asks me, what do I want to extract based on? Well, I'm going to extract based on the credit limits. Okay. And I want credit limits where the value is greater than or equal to. And I'm going to pick 10,000. Now I could say and, etc. I'm not going to do that. And the file name I'm going to give it is big customers, because these are my customers with a credit limit of over 10,000. And when I'm happy with that, then I'll say OK. And it's now opened up my file called Big Customers. And I've got 133 records there, as opposed to my sample customers, where I had 133 records of samples customers, and my big customers, sorry, 314 in my sample customers, and I'm now sitting with 133 in my big customers. Okay, so far so good. So what I can do now is I can go back into my macros, and I can switch off my record macro. And it asks me what kind of macro do I wish to contain. to create, sorry. In this case, I'm going to take it as an idea script, and I'll say OK. I'll make that my default option because I want idea script rather than visual script for the purposes of this webinar. And you can see there is my new script.iss source code. It's showing me my Excel, my indexed extraction, and my main. So there's my import assistant Excel, setting the task, and there's all of the functionality to do it. Then I've got my indexed extraction from it, creating my big files, my big customer file. Okay. Happy. Because what I can do now is I can close that down and I can save that. I'll save it, and I'll save it as big customers. Now that I've saved it, at any time I could close down that big customers, delete the file, and now I can, at any time, I can say I want to open, and there's my script called Big Customers. Double click on that, and I can say run it. The file already exists because I've just run it. Replace it, yes. And it's redone the exercise. Okay. Happy so far. Now that was nothing new. We did that in IDEA Webinar version 8. So let's go now. I'll close down my big customers, and I'm going to go and I'm going to create a brand new script from scratch. I say I am, you are. So I'll click on IDEA script to load it up. Okay, and you'll see I've got my big customers there, and I've got my new script. I'll take big customers and I'll close it because I don't particularly want it just now. And you'll see we have there sub main, then a gap, then end sub. So between sub main and end sub, I'm going to type in a message box, MSG box. I'm going to put in a quotation marks, hi to all our viewers. Why? Because if we look at that now, there's my submain, there's my statement, message box, hi to all our viewers. I didn't close the quotation, so I'll need to put that in. And you can see it was in black before, which tells me that nothing's going to happen with it. If I put in the quotations, all of a sudden it goes to red. So when I run this, the message box is going to give me that coming on the screen. I can now run that macro using the big blue arrow in the middle there, run script. And there's my message, hi to all our viewers. Why bother doing that? Because from time to time, when you're running macros, you want to either give a message to the person who's running it, or you might want to ask for a response from that person. In this case, I'm going to say OK, and that's that macro finished. Okay. So if I look back in my IDEA script, there's my new script, and there's another new script. I'll take out the other new script because I don't want that. I've got new script up here with my hi to all our viewers. So I've deleted the other new part that was coming up. I can now save it. So I'll say, again, I'm going to save the macro, File, Save As. I'm going to save it with an extremely intelligent name, Hi. Why not? Once again, at any time I can call that in and fire it off. Okay, so one of the ways we can do it, if I close that down, I'm going to bring that back in again. So I'm going to open up, and in here we have Hi, and there's the one that we had. And this time I'm going to save as. So I'll say File, Save As. Now I could save it as Hi again, or I can save it as a compiled file. If I save it as a compiled file, that's going to save it as a file .ise. Or from here, I can go into File and build hi.exe. So instead of saving as, I'm going to actually build an executable file. And if I say Save Now, then I can close this thing out. And if I go and look for hi.exe, you can see there we've got hi.exe. If I simply run it as a straightforward file, downloaded from unknown, this is my Norton's telling me, do I want to run this program anyway? Yes, I want to run it. Hi to all our viewers. So the fact that I had Caseware's idea running is irrelevant. If you handed that macro as a compiled program over to any auditor, they can then execute that as a standalone macro, and whatever you put into that macro, it will do. Okay, and that brings us to our first polling question. And if I launch it, the first polling question is saying a compiled IDEA script takes the form of an object file, an exe file, an ISI file, or an ISS file. All vote now. Once again, you don't have to get it right for NASMA purposes, but you do have to answer it. I'll give it another couple of seconds to let everyone answer. And we'll close the script. We'll close the poll and share the results. Okay, now remember, when we save a script, it saves it as an ISS. If I wish to save this as a compiled script, I've got a choice. I can either save it as an ISI, or I can save it as an EXE. For our purposes, a compiled IDEA executable script would be an EXE. But if you remember, if I opened up my Hi, I'll hide that and take it back so you can see what I'm doing. I had a choice when I said File, Save As. I can save it as an IDEA script, which is an ISS. I could save it as a compiled file, which is an ISE. Now that wasn't one of your choices, so the only other way I could save it is to go in and say File, Build exe, and that will build me a compiled IDEA script. Okay. So let's carry on from there. Well, we've done high, but we haven't really done anything terribly exciting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my high again. And as it is, it's okay, but it's nothing terribly startling. So what I can do is I can go in and right-click, and you'll see up along the button bar, we've got some choices. We've got dialogues, etc. I can find next, replace, toggle in my bookmarks, look at my language browser. We have one there called dialogues. So what I can do is I can click on that and create a new dialog. So there's my hi.iss, and there's my new dialog. And if you look at the properties of the new dialog over on the right hand side, you'll see the name is new dialog, the title is new dialog, the position, the width, the size, and the function. And then there's a whole pile of dialog tools. So we've got OK buttons, cancel buttons, button buttons, radio buttons, check boxes, static text, edit boxes, group boxes, list boxes, combo boxes, drop-down boxes, drop-down combo boxes, and pictures. In this case, we're going to pick an OK button. And we'll add an OK button. To add an OK button, we simply click on it and drag it over and drop it in. Okay. And that's, as you see, on the right hand side, the appearance, it says it's an OK button, the title is OK. There's the position. If I move that, it will change the position. There's the height, etc. That's fine as far as it goes. But OK what? OK, sir. No. I want to put in some text. So I'll add some static text. And I'll put in something that says anything I choose. Try this for size. Now you notice nothing has happened here, but it's happened up where it says title. And if I press enter, it's going to give me try this for size underneath. Now I can put it underneath, I can put it above it, I can put it wherever I want. Okay. So what we've done is if we created our standard message box, we've got our button, hi to all of yours. Now we want to take that and edit it into our script. So I will close that down and go back into my source code for my hi.iss. My new dialog is still there, but I can go back in here. And I'm going to edit into that script. In front of message box, I'm going to put a single quotation. Now a single quotation is going to give me narrative. This is not going to do anything within the script. So why bother? Because you're going to come back to this script in a year's time and look at it and say, what was I doing? Why was I doing it? So what we're going to do is display a standard, let me try that again, display standard message box. Okay, happy so far. Then I'm going to put in some instructions. My instructions in this case are going to be button. And the button is going to be equal to message box. I can delete that, so it will go there. Button equals message box. Hi to all our viewers. But in front of that bracket, I'm going to put in a comma, message box, underline, yes. And I'm going to give choices, yes, no, or cancel. And then I've got my close bracket. Now you'll notice that's in black because it's not within there. Okay, so now that I've got that in, I need to say now what do I want to do based on that button? Well, I'm going to say if button is equal to what? Well, equal to an ID of yes, then I'm going to give another button box that says, message box, and the message box is going to be very simple. You clicked yes. Okay, so far. So what I've said is this is going to display a standard message box, not a message box, but a message box. And the button box is going to be hi to all our viewers. And then I'm going to say, give me an MB, yes, no, or cancel for that button. If the button ID is yes, then I'm going to give you a message box saying you clicked yes. Otherwise, so I'm going to say else, if, which is an otherwise, message box, that's not going to tell me much. So what I'm saying, look at what was above it. If button ID is yes, then. Else if button ID no. Now what have I got? Up here I've got for button that shouldn't be a plus, that should be an equals. And down here that shouldn't be a space, that should be an equals. Then when you're doing this you will make mistakes. When you try to run it, it will tell you you are wrong. Okay, which helps. So I'm saying if button ID is no, then I'm going to say message box open quotes, you clicked no, close quotes, close brackets. Everything's happy so far. Now if it wasn't a yes and it wasn't a no, I don't have to say else if. I'm simply saying else message box open brackets, open quotes, you click cancel. Now why on earth would you want to do that? Well, you probably wouldn't, but apologies. You probably wouldn't want to do that, but if you were giving someone a choice of, let's say, which month do you wish to extract, then I might give them the choice of January, February, March, whatever. And then I might want to bring up, you click January, is this okay? And give them a choice again. So if I run this now, it tells me I have a compile error on line 10, a syntax error. And my syntax error is down at the bottom on my you clicked no, else you clicked yes. So what have I got wrong? Anyone see a problem? Well, look at what we've got. There's my sub, there's my if. What I need to finish up with is an end if. You cannot have an if statement and then just finish it and leave it hanging. You've got to say this is an if, here is the end of the if. And I'm going to add some more information. I'm going to put in a dim this dialog as new dialog. I'm going to say button equals dialog open brackets this dialog close brackets. Then I can have my end sub. Before I go any further with it, I'm going to save this one and I'll save it simply as hi 2. So that's my second hi script. If I run it now, I'm still getting an error because that should not be this dialog with a space. It should be this dialog. So it will protect you from yourself. If I run it, there's my hi to all our viewers, and I've got a choice of yes, no, or cancel. If I say no, you click no. Okay. And there's my second dialog that I put in that said try this for size. Okay. So I don't particularly want that try this for size. I can go back and open up my hi 2. I'm going to open up that dialog. There's my source, that's the original one, and there's my new dialogue that I added in. Try this for size. I could put in there thank you very much, or I can simply say take that dialogue out. Now I can't do it from here because I'm already in it. I can go into High 2, click on the dialogue, and then say I want to delete that new dialogue. I don't want that there anymore. Okay, so I've got this dialogue and I've got new dialogue. Delete it. Happy. Okay, what else could we use this kind of thing for? Well, remember we did one called Big Customers. Let's close down this script. I've got changes. Do I want to save it? Yes. Let's go and open up our Big Customers. Now it's creating all kinds of good things, but down before the bottom of it, we've got the individual functions, that function, end function, that function, end function. And what do we have up at the top? Up at the top it says call the first one, call the second one, end sub. So there's my Excel import, then there's my sample extraction, end sub. So before the end sub, I'm going to insert a line, and I'm simply going to give a message box that says open quotes MSG BOX, open quotes big customers successfully fully created, close quotes. Okay, and then I'm going to give it a message box MB underline OK, plus MB underline I confirmation, comma, underline, open quotes, it worked. Now save that one as Big Customer 2. Okay, and we'll try running that and see how it works this time. Again, it's giving me an error, and it's giving me an error on that MBOK plus MBI confirmation, underline, it worked. Still telling me I've got a syntax error on that MBOK. Now, if I go and look up my Big Customer 2, can we see the difference in that one? If I open that up, my IDEA script, Big Customer 2, I need to take that and shove it across to put it in line and take back my end sub. and it's still telling me I've got a problem with that MB OK. Nope, it doesn't like my MB underline OK. Now why is that? Let me look into that one, because that should work. I'll shut that down. Let me open up from a different place. Macros, big customers too, and run that. Isn't that interesting? There's my script. MB underline OK. There's where my problem was. I missed off that underline. So it was treating it as a totally separate entity. So if I opened up again from my big customer 2, the problem was there was an underline missing there, which says that this MBOK is a continuation. And without that, it wouldn't work. And it's still not giving me it. From time to time, you will come across what is known technically as an insoluble problem. When you look at it and you say, I cannot see what I am doing wrong. So let me go back and open up my big customer 2 again. This is from the previous course that I ran. I'm just looking for macros that I used at that time. Big customer 2. And that's it there. There's a comma missing. So if I go in and open up my big customer 2, we were missing a comma underline. And it still doesn't like it. Or the perversity of inanimate objects. Let me open up. It is so annoying when you're looking at the error and you can see the error and you've no idea what error you're looking at. Message box, big customer successfully created, comma, space, underline, MB OK, plus MBI confirmation. It worked. Let me try running it again. And it's working. Replace it. Yes. Big customer successfully created. Okay. So that's big customers too. Let's take a look at this whole scenario that we've got here. We have up on the top, we have the options for creating a new idea script. We've got the options to open an existing one, to save, to print. Now sometimes it can be useful to print that script, to put it within your working papers so that you've got a permanent memento of when we got these results, this is the script that ran, that created it. Now the reason for doing it is because if I click on save, I've just updated it. I've updated the one that was saved. And I may have made changes in here which I didn't particularly want to save. So now my records, if I look back at my history of what I've run and I look at the script, it doesn't necessarily match the output I've got. So it can be useful sometimes when you've executed it to print it before you save it or before you make any other changes. Cut allows us to take a piece of coding and cut it, and then we can copy it and paste it somewhere else. So I could take, for example, the whole of that bit and copy, go back into there, take the whole of that bit and paste. Okay, my choice. I can find the string, so I could say find it worked. Useful if you're dealing with multi-pages, and you can look up or down. I can find next, I can undo, I can replace, I can redo, I can toggle bookmarks to insert or remove existing bookmarks simply to make it easier to go through a big page of script. And that's really all it's doing for you. So when would you use which one? Well, it depends. It depends what kind of editing you're doing. Undo would replace the last transaction. Language browser will open the language browser, and with the language browser I can look in here. Effectively it's a help. And I can say, now I'm trying to do something, but what am I trying to do? And it can give you information either on BasicScript or IdeaScript. Now we are working in IdeaScript, so I can click on there and it will now show me all of the information I need to try and find all of the transactions I can do with IdeaScript. What else can we do? We can create new dialogues, we can run the script, we can debug. Now, debugging allows us to take an execution of a script and debug it so we can find out exactly what happened at each stage along the way. I can step into a function in order to debug it line by line. So I can take, for example, that function there, and I could go in and step into that particular one, or I can do a quick watch, or I can simply press help and bring up the help screen. And that brings us to our second polling question. Polling question number 2. Locating a string in the editor involves which button? Toggle, find next, find, or debug? Please vote now. Okay, we have 100% voted. I will close it and share the results. And as you can see, the majority of people have gone for using find, which would be correct. You could also use find next. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was wrong. Let me hide that and come back into our idea. Now, let's take a look at the use of variables. Okay. Let me jump back into my slides. What are variables? Variables are simply storage containers for putting data into, and you'll find them defined as DIMs. A DIM is not referring to the person and saying this is kind of a dim person. A DIM is a dimension followed by the name of the variable, and that DIM is simply reserving a container to put data into, and it will remain empty until you put something into it. So for example, you'll see down below dim string variable. So this is going to be alphabetic. There's nothing in there. So I'm going to dim string variable 2 as string, and string variable 2 will be the word greetings. So I've created a storage container called string variable 2, and then I can put something into it. Okay, happy. Let's go and try it. So I'll close this one down. And we'll go and create a new idea script. And after submain, we're going to put in the narrative. Create a string variable. Then fill it with data. Okay, so I'm going to do my dimension, my dim, and I'm going to call it string variable 2. Would help if I put a space in between it. String variable 2 as string. Now that string, the start, dim string variable 2, that string doesn't mean anything. It's simply the name of what I'm creating here. But this string does mean something. It means it's going to be alphabetic that's going in there. So then I'm going to tell it that string variable 2 is going to be greetings. Okay. Now, what I can do at this stage is I can put in an if statement. I'm going to say if what? Well, if that dim that I've created called string variable 2, if it's empty, so if is empty, brackets, string variable 2, then I will put in a message box saying string variable 2 is empty. And of course that has got to be inside quotations. Else, so if it's not empty, then message box string variable 2 contains I'll put a colon in there. Plus string variable 2. And with any other if, we're going to say end if. Okay, so what have I done? I've created my string variable 2. I've put the word greetings into string variable 2, and then I've said if it's empty, then give that message, otherwise give the message and tell me what it contains. So if I run that now, it doesn't like greetings. Why? Because it's got a plus instead of an equals. Run it again, and it tells me string variable 2 contains greetings. Well, we knew that. But we know that because I've just typed it in. That string variable 2 could be customer name. And I can say message box string variable 2 contains Smith, Jones, whatever. So I could have a script going that says if someone account goes into negative, then show me the customer name. And I'm going to say the string variable 2 is customer name, and then bring that up. So instead of putting a text in there, greetings, I'm going to say string variable 2 equals customer name and message box, show me the string variable 2. Okay, so I'll save that one again. And I'll save it as greetings. Okay, happy so far. Now, when we created that storage box, that storage container for data, and we followed that script, it can either be a global name or a local name. I can create a constant. So here we created a variable, okay, and we said we wanted a dim, which was a string variable. And over here, whoops, I've just shot to the end. Let me go back up to where we were. And what we're now going to do is, instead of a variable, we're going to create a constant. Okay. And in this case, the constant is going to be bye-bye Richard. So I'll go back in, and we'll go back into AdvancedScript. And I'm going to put in a constant name equal a value, so I'm going to say const I'm going to give it a name, my constant. In the same way as I gave it string variable, my string variable or string variable 2. And the constant this time is going to be by Richard. And then all I'm going to do is say give me a message box with my constant in it. And if I run that, my constant, my constant equals by Richard. By Richard. So we've looked at creating variables that we're going to load things into, and constants that are going to contain individual types of record, or types of data, I should say. So what kind of types of data do we have? Well, these are some of the different types of data that you can use within IDEA scripts. You can have data which is Boolean data. Boolean data essentially gives you a range of true or false. It's only 1 byte long. Currency data, where it's dimmed as a B variable as byte, or dim a C variable as currency. If it's defined as a byte, it's 1 byte long, and that means it can be anything from 0 to 255. Remember, 1 byte, one binary digit, in terms of ASCII characters, can hold 256 possible combinations. So it can go from anything from 0 to 255. Currency holds 8 bytes, and being 8 bytes, it can go from minus that big number to plus that big number. Fine. I can define it as a date. So there's my dim again, and this is a D variable as date. That will give me an 8-byte variable showing any day between the year 100 and the year 9999. I can define it as a double. Okay, and if it's dim variable as double, then it's giving me 8 bytes, and it can go from minus 1 point that times 10 to the 308 to plus 4.94 times 10 to the minus 234 for negative values. And for positive values, it goes the other way around. Integers, if you're wanting to deal with straightforward integers, and that's the kind of suffix that you get, then you're going to dim an integer variable as an integer. That's 2 bytes that you normally get, and that's from minus 32,768 to plus 32,767. Long, if you can't fit that in, if 32,000 isn't going to be enough, then I can define as a long variable. So dim long variable as long. Remember we said dim string as a string. This one time I'm going to give it dim, the name that I'm giving it, as a long variable. That will automatically give me 4 bytes, and I can now fit in anything from minus 2 trillion to plus 2 trillion. I can define it as a single object, so I can dim x as an object, which will give me a 4 bytes long. I can put anything in there. Or dim a single variable as a single, and that will give me 4 bytes, and I can put numbers in there from minus that to plus that for negative values. String, and that should read dim d variable as string. That should be, let me change that to s variable as string. So if you want to change your slide, that should read S variable as string. And that will go from anything from 0 to 64,500 characters. User define, where you create using the type keyword, and you can make it anything you want. Or you can dim X as variant, and you can put any kind of variable in there that you choose. Okay, suffixes. So I can create a suffix, create a variable using a suffix. So there's an example, my long ampersand equals 1, my double hash equals 1. Now remember what I did? If I go back through here, I was saying there's a double with a hash, and there's a single either with no suffix or with an exclamation mark. So there's my long with no suffix, my double with a hash, and it demonstrates that the variables are different types. Okay, now if I do this, I'm not going to execute this at the moment. You can put these in yourself. This is IdeaScript. There's my submain. Create the variable using a suffix. Or should I? Well, remember what I can do, which you can't do, is I can go down here and I can pick up the whole of that and copy it, and I can take that whole new script and replace it with that. And if I run that now, I'm going to get a syntax error. Create the variables using the suffix. That should not give me a problem. So I'm saying create the variables using a suffix. Why doesn't it like it? Create the variables using a suffix. Why does it not like the variables? Let's try create using a suffix. And it still doesn't like it. Let me try putting that in. And you can see what's happened. The same thing here, if I take that out and put the quote in. See how the colors have changed? It now recognizes that that's narrative. I just copied it in. It didn't recognize that that was a definition of a narrative. So if I run it now, it tells me it's a 3. Then a 5. Okay. So I said my long is 1 character, my double is that. And then I said show me which type of variable it is for my long, and show me the type of variable it is for my double. And you'll see there type 3 is a long and type 5 is a double. Okay. So you can have a look at the help functions on characters, and you can try that script, the one below it, hello world, at your leisure. Okay. I can be sneaky because I've got it. But what is it actually doing? It's creating a handy variable for adding lines to the output. So there's my dim, and I've said that this will be a string, and it's going to be character 13 plus character 10, and define the strings. So dim string 1 will be string, dim string 2 will be string, dim string 3 will be string. Hello, world, goodbye. Show the upper and lower. So there's uppercase of string 1 and there's lowercase of string 1. So that will simply display them. Find the middle of the string. So we'll do dim middle as long, and then middle will be the length of string 1 divided by 2. So that's going to give me the middle of string 1. To display the parts of the string, I can do a message box. The O is at where it is in string 1, and the left two characters are the left on there and the right. The right two characters are the right, the middle three characters are that. I can create my composite strings. I can remove excess space from the string. Do you see what we're doing here? These are using the at functions. Do you remember the at functions? If I go back in and I go into my analysis and I'll do a direct extract for the hell of it, and I get into there to my at functions. So what am I doing? If I'm doing left, I'm saying give me the leftmost characters, and over here I'm saying remove excess space from strings. I can compare two different strings, either say they're equal or say string 1 is greater or string 2 is greater, etc. So I'll leave you to try that at your leisure. You've got all of the text there, but I'll let you play with it. And on Thursday, when we run the next one, you can come back and tell me if you're having any problems with it. Okay. If you want to see how it actually works, there's my hello world. So if I were taking this, I could say I want to go and open, and I'll open it from strings. These are ones that I've already done. Samples, macros, hello world. And that's what you'll end up with. So we're creating a handy variable for adding lines to the output, etc. If I run it now, cannot be submitted when the dialog box is open. So there's my dialog box. Let me close that down. Let me close that down and run that. Uppercase hello, lowercase hello. The 0 is at position 5. The left two characters are HE, the right two characters are LO, the middle three characters are ELL, giving you hello world. Goodbye. String 1 is less than string 2, etc. So that's hello world. The reason I give you that for homework is because that gives you very good practice at taking some of the concepts that we've already done when we looked at the at functions, the advanced at functions, and incorporating them into script. Okay, so we can look at where in the string it is, and if you can't remember how it works, then it's very simple. You go across and you ask for help. Okay. Control, whatever it is you want to ask for help on. So I want to look at the middle of the string. CSTR, convert to a string. Oh yes, I remember that. CSTR. Yeah, convert to a string. How does that work? Okay, so try it, get comfortable with it. And that's the trick with all of this, is just to get comfortable with, and you'll make mistakes and it will tell you you've made a mistake. Okay. If you made a mistake, go back and have a look at the slide to see which mistake you made. Okay. Let's try adding up. And once again, I've given you a string for adding up. What we're going to do is define some numbers. It's defined as a byte. It's going to be 120. Then we'll define an integer as 120 and a long as 120. Display the sum of the numbers on the screen. So message box for that plus that plus that. Ask the user for input and then display it as a number. So input number is going to be integer. And instead of message box, I'm going to say input number is an input box. Type a number. Then I'll give you the message box with the input number and my integer, etc. And again, if I show you how that looks in reality, I'll open up the one that I've already done called my number. I beg your pardon, called adding up. And there's the script. Define some numbers. M byte is byte, 120. M integer is integer, 120. That, display the sum of the screens. Ask it for input and then display it as a number. It's going to tell me it's 360. 360 and 360. Type a number. 452. Okay. So 360 plus what I typed in is going to give me 572. Okay. Again, it's not a particularly riveting script, but it gives you the idea of how to create different types of numbers, how to add them up, how to show them on the screen, how to get an input box, because that's a critical one. And when you've got an input box, how to show that on the screen. Okay. And that brings us to the next one. We're going to create a phone message. A phone message recording script. And the way we're going to do it is type phone message, caller name is string, time called is date, contract number is string, the message is string, end type, and then we're going to use it. Okay. So we start off with our submain creating and filling the user-defined type. So I will close those ones down. And I'll go into my macros, and again I'll open it since I've already done all of this. Pick it up from samples. My macros, phone message. Okay, and that's what it looks like. Now what I'll do is I'll leave that on screen so that you can type that in as a new one. and that should take you about 5 minutes. If everyone can see that. Let me make it slightly larger. Type phone message, the caller name as string, the time called as date, the contact number as string, and the message as string. End type. Then we're going to say, within our main routine, create and fill the user-defined type. So dim my call as phone message. My call caller name is going to be an input box that says enter the name of the caller. My call time called is going to be now, and if you remember looking at those functions, the at functions, you'll find that now gives you current time from your computer. My call contact number input box, enter the caller's number. My call message equals input box, enter the message. And then we'll display the message. Caller name called at time and says the message, you can reach the party at, and the contact number. End sub. So I'll give you some time to type that in, and if you can give me a quick show of hands when you've typed it in, and we'll try it from there. Nice thing about this, you can actually use this to create a database and actually create an executable program and give it to people and say, listen, if I'm out of the office, can you just take messages for me? Run it on this program. Okay, so we're getting people who've already typed it in. Well done, Kim. And Jim. And try executing it and see how it comes out. It should come out saying enter the name of the caller, Fred. Enter the caller's number, 970-291-1497. Into the message, this thing does not work. And there's my message. Fred called at that time on that date and says this thing doesn't work. You can reach the party at there. Okay, one little script, make it executable, add in saving it to disk, which we'll cover, and all of a sudden you've replaced all those annoying bits of paper that your secretary has to leave on your desk. Okay, which brings us, I'm afraid, to our next polling question. A string variable is defined using dim string, string variable, or dim string variable. And I'll launch that for you. Sorry, my fault that you couldn't see it. And we'll close it and share the results. And most people have gone for dim string variable. You're right that a string variable is how it be defined, but to do the definition you're going to have to say dim. This dimension is a string variable. Okay. Let me hide that. And let's take a look at conditional statements. Now we've done some of it. What we want to say is if something, then do something else. I have a question. Which one of the polling questions is right? D, dim string variable. Okay. String variable is how you would define it, but string variable is what it would be defined as. But the definition part is when you say dim string variable. Okay. So, if something, then do certain things, else, you want to do something else. So the if statement says if condition then statements end if, or if condition then statements else do other statements end if. So in most cases you have to have an if followed by an end if. That being the case, one of the things that you occasionally want to do when you're running one of these is to say select something out of a list. Okay, so select case variable, value 1, value 2, value 3, do various things, and select. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to take a script for going on vacation. So we're going to create a handy variable for adding lines to the output, and we're going to add which would your choice be for a vacation. And that effectively is what you're going to be adding in. Dim variable, a string. It's going to be character 13 plus character 10. Create a handy variable for adding tabs to the output. Obtain the user's food selection or vacation selection. It's not going to be food in this case, it's going to be vacation. Dim integer, please select a vacation. Then it's going to ask you to add in 1 for skiing, 2 for scuba, 3 for cycling, 4 for beach, and then display on the screen. Select case menu option. Case 1 as you chose that, case 2 as you chose that, case 3 as you chose that from the menu. And once again, I'll give you some time to try it. And you can give me a show of hands when you've entered it. I'm showing you the script here, but you've got the same thing in your handouts, in your notes. So at any stage you can go back and do it again. Now the reason we're doing these is to give you an idea of the types of things you can do under certain circumstances. This is the kind of thing that you'd want to do within a script. Not necessarily for a holiday, but you might want to say, do you wish to extract December's information or January's information or whatever. So then based on what you're entering, I could show it on the screen just to say you chose January. Is this correct? Yes, fine. Now I'll go and do the extract part. Or it could be, do you wish to see invoices greater than 1,000, 5,000, 10,000? You chose 10,000. Is that correct? Getting hands up already. Obviously you can type a lot faster than I can. Okay. So let's take a look at how it executes. It simply comes up and selects, it says please select a vacation. Skiing, scuba, cycling or beach. Well, given the fact that I'm currently in Steamboat Springs, I better put in 1. You chose skiing. Fine. And that's the end of the script. Okay. So it gave us a choice. Select a vacation. Okay. We had that. Tab, character 13, character 10. With a string one as skiing. And then depending on the case, it told me which one you'd chosen. Okay. Moving on. The other thing we can use is adding a case else. Now let's say that we took our 1 to 4 skiing, scuba, etc. From time to time someone's going to put in a 5. And we can put in a case else. Now we haven't put it in yet. So let me go back. And you can see there, if I ran it now, and I simply put in a 5, it just dies. So I can put in an instruction before that, before it dies, before the end select. I could put in there case else, and the message box would be you chose choose and then give them the menu options again. And if we run it now, and I put in a 5, you chose 5, and then it needs to go back and give me that menu option again. Okay. Believe me, if you give people a chance of picking a number between 1 and 4, some of them are going to pick 7. Other choices or other things that we'll do with these is do loops. Now do loop can run for a variable length of time. So what I can say is do while x equals 1 and loop. And it will carry on looping until x does not equal 1. Or I can say do this loop while for a condition, or do until that go loop, or do something loop until a condition is met. Now what does that do for us? It checks a condition. If I look at do while something loop, it checks a condition before the task even gets started. So I can say do while customer is greater than 5,000, these things, exit the do, and then optional statements, and then say go loop around that. Do loop while starts the task, then continually checks the condition. So do these things, exit the do, and then you can have other statements, and then loop while customer number is greater than 5,000 or while customer number is less than 5,000. So it will start the task and then continually check that condition until it finds one that fulfills that, and then it will stop. The other alternative, of course, is do until loop. So again, it checks a condition before the task is started, and then it will do whatever that task is you've given it until the condition becomes true. In other words, you've finished the task. So do until whatever condition, these statements, exit do. And you can give it an optional exit with various other statements and then loop it round it. Do something loop until. Now you might think these all sound the same. In terms of programming in BASIC, they're all different. They sound as though they're doing the same thing, but if you write a small program and just try it, try adding from 1 to 10 and displaying it on the screen, and then do that loop until the number becomes 10. Try doing something loop until, do loop something until, etc. Try each of the conditions and see how different they are. So here you've got do statements, exit do. Here are other statements, loop until number equals 10. So I'm going to display the number on the screen. exit do, number equals number plus 1, loop until number equals 10. Just to get you familiar with the difference between do loop until, do until loop, do loop while, and do while loop. So do while loop checks it before you start. Do while this condition is true, go and do it. So I could say do while number is less than 10, display the number, exit do, add 1 to the number, loop. Or do the statements and continually check a condition. So do display the number, exit do, add 1 to it, loop while number is less than 10. Okay. So in the first one I'm saying do while number is less than 10. Down here I'm saying do all of this and loop while number is less than 10. Okay, each of them. And that brings us to our next polling question, having possibly confused everyone. To execute a task until a condition is true, we do something loop until, we do until something loop, we do loop while, or we do while loop. As I say, to execute a task until a condition is met, what is it we want to do? We want to do something until a condition. Once again, you don't have to get it right, but you do have to do it. Okay, let me close that down and share the results. And as I expected, we've got a real mixture. To execute, you can actually do it any of the ways. Okay, but as it's laid out there, to execute the task until something happens, you would do that loop until this is true. Okay, let's take a look at where we go from here. Now we've done quite a few things, so what do we do now? Well, now what we've done is all interactive. It would be nice if we could do it using our data. Okay, and we're going to bring in information from a database, and we're going to do things with information from a database. Now the different kinds of databases that you're going to use, in this case we're going to use relational databases. Okay, databases started off a depressing number of years ago, almost as old as I am. In the old days the concept was take all of the corporate data, throw it into the computer, and when we'll need it we'll figure out how to get it out. That was the original idea of the corporate database. Now that's like walking into a room that's filled with filing cabinets. You walk into human resources, you see filing cabinets, and under my name you'll find my whole history. Great. But if somebody walks into that room of filing cabinets and says, I want to know in 1993 how many left-handed red-headed plumbers were in the apprenticeship scheme, how do you find that out? You're going to have to take every single file out of every single one and go through them and look for, is this red-headed, is it left-handed, is it a plumber, is he an apprentice, was it 1993? There's no easy way of jumping into it, and that was a problem with the old databases. They were very good at going straight to the file with my name on it and pulling it out, and here's all my information. But if you want a bit out of this file, and a bit out of that file, and a bit out of that file, useless. So we had the old hierarchical databases, which were very good at number crunching. They're still around. Then we moved to network databases, where you could do that. You could find the next person in the plumber's scheme or in the apprenticeship scheme, because when you went to my record and you found I was in it, within my record there would be a pointer to the next record which had an apprentice. So now you've got to go to that filing cabinet and pull it out. And that would show you where the next record was, and then you had to go and pull that one out. But you had to keep all of these pointers up to date. So you could do it, but there was a big overhead on the machine. Then someone said, look, the original idea of throw the information in and we'll figure out what to do with it when we want it is actually still a good idea. And they came up with the concept of relational databases. So they said, we'll take the information that we've got and break it down into small tables, small files, which will look like an Excel spreadsheet with rows and columns and row numbers and column headings. And within each of those tables, there'll be something that when we come to use it, we can connect to other tables. So that I could have something that says, within my record, within my table, there's something that says apprentice type 24. And I can then go to the apprentice table and say, what is type 24? Ah, that's a plumber. Physical attributes. Within my own one, 15. Let's look at the physical attributes table. 15, left-handed. And I could pick it up and relate them normally on the fact that things in this table are equal to things in that table. And that was the concept behind relational databases. Now, most of the databases you're going to come across these days will be relational databases. For this purpose, we're going to use the relational database. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply define a database object. So I'm going to do a dim DB as database, open it up using the default client folder. So I'll set my DB equals, so remember the dim DB was the name of the database, and I'm going to say dim DB equals client.openDatabase, and that's what it's going to be called. Clear the memory used by the database, set DB equal nothing, end the sub. Okay. So I'm going to define it as an object, open it up, set the database to whatever we set it to, and clear the memory. Okay. And if you look back, I'm not going to do it, I'll get you to type it in, but if we go back into here, and I go back into my sample customers, and if I look over on history, and I look at my import from Excel, there's my DB name, and that's where it was. I set my DB name to that, set task to nothing, open the database. Once I've opened the database, then I can go and do whatever I want to it. And in this case, I'm going to set my DB equal to that, set the task equal to DB index, and then I'm going to set the task to nothing, set the DB to nothing, and clear it off again. Okay, don't worry if it sounds very complicated. We're going to be doing more of it in the second webinar in this series. But that brings us to our next database. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. That brings us to our next polling question. If I launch the polling question, and it says to define the database, I will dim DB as database, dim database name as database, dim DB as database name, or set DB as database name. I'll close that down and share the results. And it was actually a trick question. If you look at that to define a database, what do we have here? To define a database object, dimdb is database. Dimdb is database. Okay, and then to open it, we set db. So D is what we use for setting it to the database that we want, putting that into our dim. Okay. So what we did was we did a dim db as database. Okay. Then we set db equal to the name. So we wouldn't do b. And we wouldn't do c because we're not defining it as a database name, we're defining it as a database. Okay. What about maths? Well, this is some basic maths. We've got a submain, dimming the first number as an integer, first number equals 5. Dimming the second number as an integer, second number is 2. Dimming the result as an integer, result equals first number divided by second number. And message box, 5 divided by 2 equals, and the result. Okay, nothing terribly complicated. Until you start trying to make it complicated. So what do we have here? We've got submain dim, the first number is an integer, the first number is 5, that's fine. Second number is an integer, the second number is 2, that's fine. Result is an integer, but result is an integer, first number divided by second number, with a dim of a remainder as an integer. And the remainder is the first number mod the second number. So the message box 5 divided by 2 and the results with a remainder of and the remainder. Okay. And again, if I were to take that, we close that down. And let me fire off open, and if I'll pick up one that I've... This is like they used to do on the TV when you get all these chefs. Here is one I did earlier. So there's my basic maths set out. There's my dim, first number is integer, first number equals 5, second number, etc. There's my message box. If I execute that, 5 divided by 2 equals 3. Now 5 divided by 2 does not equal 3. It equals 2.5. So what happened? Well, it went wrong. And it went wrong because when we look at it, we said that 5 divided by 2, the result is an integer. So it can't take it as point anything. So it's rounded it up. So that's not really what I wanted. So let me go and open my other one, which was my basic math 2. And now I'm saying the result is an integer, but the result is the integer of first number divided by second number with a remainder as an integer. And if I run that one, it's giving me 5 divided by 2 equals 2 with a remainder of 1. Okay, so you've got to be careful when you start doing arithmetic and you've got things defined as integers, because it may not come out the way you intended. Let me just take that one back to the data so it doesn't confuse us. What I said was 5 divided by equals that, plus result, plus with the remainder of, and that remainder. Okay. Now the difference, if you remember, between the Basic Maths 2 and Basic Maths, if I opened it up, and I go back into that Basic Math, that was simply saying the result is first number divided by second number, and that rounded it up. That one says, just give me the integer part of it, first number divided by second number. So it's not 2.5 and then round it up to 3. It's saying 2.5 is 2, the integer part of it, and then the remainder as, and that brings it out as a remainder of 1. Okay, and that brings us to our next polling question, which you'll be glad to hear is polling question number 6. Numbers are generally defined as numbers, boolean, integers, or string. I thought we'd finish off with a really difficult one. What are numbers defined as? Generally. Once again, you don't have to get it right, you do have to vote. And I will close it off. And the bulk of people, if I share the results, the majority of people have gone for integers, which is the correct answer. Remember, string is where you're going to define your alpha as string characters. Numbers are generally defined as integers. Okay. And that brings us to the end of this webinar. Are there any questions? Don't be shy. Jim unfortunately cannot join us for the end of this webinar, so I'm afraid you're stuck with me having to wrap it up. No questions? Next schedule, the last one, is the Advanced Script Writing and Idea Part 2, which we'll pick up on Thursday. Don't forget, there's all of that supplementary information available that you can look at to your heart's content. Okay. And other than that, thank you for joining us. And as with all of the other ones, I hope you found it useful. If you have any queries, you can contact me on those numbers. In fact, my cell number has changed. It's not 970-291-1497. And I'm going to have to switch on my new cell phone in order to tell you what it is. Jim Kaplan's numbers remain the same, and you will get me on that email address if you need me. We'll be resending the PowerPoint slides. I'm not sure, did you not get the PowerPoint slides already? I'll check with Jim because it's not me that sends them out. The only change that was made on it was that one on the scuba diving where it said instead of what kind of food, I asked you to change it to say what kind of sport or what kind of holiday would you prefer. It's not a train smash if it still says food. So I would suspect he probably will not send that one out again. My telephone number. you didn't get the slides to begin with. In that case, I will chase that with Jim and make sure that you get the slides, Christopher. Sorry about that. Okay. The telephone number is 970-891-2686 if you need to get hold of me. But I will check with Jim on those and I will chase him for it. Other than that, thank you for coming, and I'll see you on Thursday. Okay. Take care.